Today, we are going to be talking about Fist Fight, The Great Wall, and A Cure for Wellness, so stay tuned.
Welcome to The Real Review.
Welcome to The Real Review, sponsored by Parametric and Lazy Ape Studios, where you get some of the latest happenings, real thoughts, and perspectives in the world of film and television. I'm here with Matt Milekihei. And who am I today, Matt?
Everybody, I am with Joel Wants a Double-Decker Couch Cunningham.
That's a great reference. I actually haven't seen that movie in a very long time. I saw the sequel, though.
Yeah. I saw the sequel 2 days ago, so that's what I wanted to say.
Well, we should have waited until you saw that. Dude, what did you think?
I did. I liked it.
Yeah.
I was a little under the weather.
Oh,
so
okay.
I think maybe there's some stuff that just went over me.
Gotcha.
Just because
Like
it was
a double-decker couch.
I was foggy, right? I was a little bit foggy.
For those of you who aren't familiar with what we're talking about, we've got the Lego movie and Batman movie that we're talking. Batman Lego movie, yeah. So
yes. Also, hey, maybe we can talk about this on a critic corner at some point in time in the future. But I love how they're like, yeah, this is MacGuffin Airlines, at the very beginning.
Yeah, I didn't notice that one actually.
Where we have 100 sticks of dynamite, 3,000 smoke bombs, and two best friends.
That was pretty funny. Yeah. So, welcome to all of you folks that are listening in and joining us for the very first time. If this is your first time to the podcast, the Real Review Podcast, then we just want to say hello and then also let you know a little bit about what we do here on the Real Review Podcast. This is basically our main show that we do reviews of films, and we kind of do a bit of a fan versus a critic perspective.
Right.
Matt tends to represent more of the fan perspective, as you can hear.
I'm emotionally driven, maybe emotionally unstable too. I don't know.
Potentially. You might want to get that looked at.
Yeah, it's okay.
And I tend to be more of the critic perspective, meaning that I just don't like stuff.
He's just negative and mean.
Very negative, very mean. But, for you guys, I will do my best to be a little bit more positive. How does that sound, Matt?
I'll try and be emotionally stable.
Well, that's great. So welcome to the podcast. Yeah, and today we're going to be reviewing 3 films, Fist Fight, The Great Wall, and A Cure for Wellness. And so I'm really excited to talk about these. Matt, you had a chance to watch one of these films. I had a chance to watch 2 of these films. So I imagine I'll be doing a bit more of the talking, but I definitely want to get your perspectives on the films.
Right, because I have questions.
You have questions, I have answers.
Yes.
I don't have questions, but I'll try and think of a few.
Okay.
Cool. So why don't we get right into it then, Matt? And
let's do that.
What's our first film we're going to be reviewing?
Yeah, first fume.
Fume.
Yeah, the first fume. Okay, the first film that we're going to be reviewing is Fist Fight.
Yes, Fist Fight.
And you had the wonderful honor to watch this movie.
I left the theater feeling like I had maybe gotten in a fist fight. Actually,
right?
Maybe I had been the loser side of a fist fight. So, Fist Fight is a film that was released in theaters the 17th of February, and it basically, we talked about this, is one school teacher gets the other fired, and he's a challenge to an after-school fight. It's directed by Richie Keene. It stars primarily Ice Cube, Charlie Day, and I would say Tracy Morgan is a main sort of side character, as well as Jillian Bell and Dean Norris from Breaking Bad fame. So I would say that is a very good synopsis of the film. I would say that usually the way that I like to introduce things like this when we're doing reviews is I like to start with the positives and then move on to the negatives. But
do you not have positives?
Well, I'll try that. I'm going to try that. The film we're going to be talking about later, I think I'm going to flip it up and do the opposite.
Okay.
But for this film, I will start by trying to talk about the positives. The positives were, it was short.
Oh, man.
Yeah. So I don't know why this film just hit me in all the wrong ways. And I will say this, Charlie Day was effective.
Well, remember, he was the one that we were like most looking forward to in that movie.
Yeah, I love Charlie Day. I love me some Charlie Day and some It's Always Sunny, even though it's a crazy show to watch and it's got some pretty off-the-wall type humor at times. I think he's hilarious in that. And I think, unfortunately, in this film, it played to the least funny of what Charlie Day is capable of. It felt like the scripting and the dialogue was everything that you would absolutely expect. It's like, okay, well, now they're going to say something that's a bit shocking. Okay, well, now they're going to say something that just kind of pushes the boundaries of, what's socially normal. Okay, now they're going to do some prank or now some stupid thing. And it was constantly like that. And so the main premise behind the whole movie is that basically Charlie Day is this character that's kind of very standard of what you would expect from Charlie Day. He's kind of like this looked down on, kind of weak-willed guy that everybody kind of picks on and just kind of puts up with it, Right. And he's this teacher at the school, and they're going through this it's the end of the year. It's the final day of school, and all the kids are doing these pranks on the teachers and on each other, and mostly just the teachers in the school. And honestly, the students I couldn't stand for the most part. Okay. I'm like, if these are kids that are actually doing the things that they're doing, most of these kids would get arrested and probably expelled. You know, just awful, horrible things. I mean, they're playing like pornography in the hallways. They're releasing horses in there. They're putting banners and wearing shirts with a profanity. I mean, just crazy stuff that some of these kids are drawing, like, you know, penis eye all over things on the football field. Yeah,
seems way more elaborate than what actual students would want to put effort into.
Absolutely, it felt like they were overly intelligent with coming up with really stupid ideas.
Right.
It was like you're either stupid and you're coming up with stupid ideas, or you're super intelligent and you're coming up with intelligent ideas.
Right.
I mean, they're literally rigging up pulleys and like wires that you walk across and it shoots paint in your face, you know, and they come up with these like launches, and it's like, that's super intricate.
Yeah.
You know, why don't these kids actually apply themselves into learning things? And so
stay in school, kids.
I'm getting a bit sidetracked here. Anyway, so Charlie Day plays this character basically that's kind of looked down on. He's attacked by his other, you know, mostly the students, but some of the other teachers kind of look down on him as well. And they're at the end of the school year, and so the principal, is played by Dean Norris of Breaking Bad, basically is going through this scenario where he's trying to figure out who's going to stay and who's going to go, who's going to get fired and who's going to move on to sort of like the coming school year. They had to do budget cuts.
Okay.
And so there's this imminent idea in Charlie Day's character that he has to keep this job because his wife is pregnant and he needs to make money and make a living, and otherwise she's going to hate him and it's going to be really horrible. And so that's kind of the setup for everything, and that's what ends up basically happening with Ice Cube as well. He and Ice Cube have some bad interactions at the beginning, and then things kind of get better and better, and then this one kid is doing a prank on Ice Cube, and Ice Cube overreacts, as he would, and destroys the kid's table with an axe. And so, which sounds funny, but it wasn't really handled as funny as you'd think. And then Charlie Day and him end up getting into this kind of back and forth where Charlie Day ends up getting Ice Cube fired. And so that sets up the scenario then where this fight would have to take place. But over the course of the film, that kind of goes back and forth. There's this weird moment where it's like, okay, he's not going to fight him, but then he is going to fight him, and then he's not going to fight him, then he is. And it's I didn't need that. I didn't need this complex up and down of like, are they going to fight or are they not going to fight? The movie is called Fist Fight. You know they're going to fight at some point. So it didn't do anything to add any suspense or interest. And everything was kind of just really, it felt like just a setup for a weird or funny or quirky scenario, which is so lowbrow. It's so low, like, let's get to some actual like funny stuff. The one thing I will say as well is Jillian Bell's character, who I thought she's great in 22 Jump Street. I haven't seen her in much else. She played a really pretty awful person in this script. Okay. Yeah. The character that she played was a teacher, and she gets along. She's kind of like Charlie Day's friend, his only like person, his compadre of sorts at the church or at the school.
Yeah.
And she's a druggie. Additionally, she has this weird infatuation with some of the younger boys at the school, and she talks abruptly and very broadly about her hopes and dreams to do things with some of the boys, and it feels very wrong.
Yeah.
And even in like the sense of like, well, this is a comedy and it's R-rated and it's going to joke about things like that, it crossed that line of me being like, ha to like, ha ha, like, is that something we should be joking about? I mean, is that really something that's super funny? So that was just awkward. It felt like Charlie Day had this, basically he's trying to go through this story arc of becoming this independent, like, I'm sick, like I can do what I need to do and be the strong person that I need to be for myself and for my family, and I don't have to worry about what other people think or what they say. He's trying to get to that story arc, and he gets there, but that happens about 3/4 of the way through the film, and then it falls flat, and then it like comes back at the very end of the film, which leads up to this big epic fist fight that happens between Ice Cube and him. And I would say that's probably like my favorite part of the whole movie is the fist fight that happens between Charlie Day and Ice Cube.
Okay.
That's actually pretty funny. I thought that there was like some funny humor there. It was very obvious, but it's silly, it's funny, it's goofy. And it was just funny to think of Ice Cube and Charlie beating the crud out of each other. So I thought that was pretty good and effective. But everything about this is completely like, you know what's going to happen. You know the joke's going to be here. They set it up, then they make the joke. It's not that funny, and then they move on to the next sort of situation and scenario.
Right.
And the only other thing that I say, and this was like again another like slightly offensive thing for me, and there's a lot of things I'm not talking about just because we don't like to spoil things too much on the show here, but there's a scene with him and his daughter where he has to do this kind of like father-daughter talent show thing.
Okay.
And he gets up there with her and she wants to do this other song and she ends up doing this song. Some people are going to not care about this, but this was offensive to me. It's basically this rap song that's got like the most F-bombs and all this stuff. And she's just up there cursing out this little girl.
Yeah.
And she's like, 11. And it makes me feel really bad when I see stuff like that. Because
okay.
I work with a lot of kids and you're like, when a kid is talking like that, you recognize that there's probably deeper issues within that kid that need to really get worked out. And so people are probably listening to this review and they're probably thinking like, Joel, you're being way too severe about an R-rated comedy, which is obviously supposed to be, lowbrow and silly and stupid.
Right.
But I think there can be an R-rated comedy that doesn't immediately desire to go to the lowest common denominator and then somehow like shock you in that.
Yeah.
I think of the examples of like shows like South Park or Family Guy, and obviously those are shows, but those are lowbrow comedies that had at times made like social commentary, but then they kind of fell into this lower brow of just doing shock kind of stuff.
Yep.
And this felt like one of those movies that fell into just doing the shock.
Yeah.
And it didn't have any of the commentary. It didn't have any of the purpose. It didn't have any of the drive. It really was just trying to go like, oh my gosh, look how ridiculous this is. This is so
like
crazy.
Lowest common denominator humor.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's kind of my thoughts, Matt. Did you have any questions, thoughts you wanted to share?
A little bummed out. I thought Charlie Day would be more of the redeeming aspect of it. It just looks like, it sounds like it didn't have much to work with as far as scripting is concerned, and that it had poor execution from the director in this instance, but maybe even the writer, but it's just kind of, or a combination of everything. But
I think Charlie was okay. I think if I had to like say the best actor of the whole bunch would probably be Tracy Morgan.
Okay.
He's the one that actually had a couple lines that made me laugh a bit and chuckle a bit. Ice Cube did have, and again, like when we first talked about it, I said, there's obviously going to be this thing where he gets a fight with Ice Cube, but then it turns out that he's got like a heart of gold, and sure enough, I don't want to spoil anything, but sure enough, you get to the fight and it's like, oh, okay. So he's got this good heart deep down.
I can't take Tracy Morgan seriously since 30 Rock. And I think I just picture him running down a freeway with a lightsaber. It's I am a Jedi. I am a Jedi.
Yeah, he plays a great character.
My gosh.
This is a lessened version of his 30 Rock character.
Okay, I gotcha.
So
if you got to rate this thing, man,
wow,
what would you put it at?
I would put it at probably a D-.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
That would be like a low 60s kind of. I think if there had been a little bit more to the script, if there had been a bit more for me to latch onto story-wise, a little more to latch on even character-wise, because it felt like they were really only putting the story arc in there because they had to have him go do something.
Right.
If they put a bit more in that, and if they'd come up with more clever gags or more clever ideas, I felt like a kid that was actually in the film could have written this, like a kid that was in high school.
Gotcha.
And come up with it's like, here we put a penis joke, and here we put, this guy blows something up and it hits him in the face. It's like, okay. Yeah. So there you go.
Good to know.
Yeah. So that's going to be all for our commentary and my review on Fist Fight. I've said plenty. I think I've said more than enough for that. So Matt, why don't we move on to our next film? Does that sound good to you?
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome.
And we've had a chance to talk about this a little bit, just kind of what we thought in our coming soon segment. But I did get a chance to see The Great Wall.
Yeah.
And I will say this.
Mm-hmm.
We did talk about it.
I'm in suspense here.
I will say this because we did talk about it. Obviously, it was directed by the guy who did Hero.
Yes.
And again, Yimou Zhang.
Yes, the film Hero, not the show Heroes.
Right.
Yes.
Correct. It's a big difference.
Big difference.
Not Tim Kring. So, Matt Damon, William Dafoe, and a lot of other people, and Pedro Pascal is probably the big one. But here's the thing with this movie. It, at its best, you can tell that it took a lot of I would say like ideas and like visual style and even like attack sequences from Lord of the Rings.
Okay.
I don't feel like it pulled them off as well, but I would say that there's a lot of that stuff, and that was the best part.
Yeah.
Those were the best parts of the film.
Okay.
The first half hour of this movie is actually decent, where you're like, oh, this is cool. So if you're unfamiliar with it, I mean, we've covered it before, but European mercenaries, namely Matt Damon and Pedro Pascal, they're searching for black powder and become embroiled in the defense of the Great Wall of China against a horde of monstrous creatures.
Mm-hmm. Is this literally black powder? It's not like some sort of, okay.
So
yeah.
they're looking for black powder because it's mythical. And the guy's like, you can kill 12 people at once with this black powder.
Yeah.
I know, and you see them kind of they kind of travel with a band of mercenaries, I guess. So they're traveling,
like a Robin Hood type thing,
right? And then what happens is, half their crew gets like killed by like these monsters, and they don't know what it is, and so they end up being chased by another band of mercenaries or something, and like end up getting to the Great Wall, and end up getting tied into what they have going on. And the first thing you see is they're tied up. They're on the roof, and everybody's like battle cry, like, oh, what's happening? They're like, what's going on? And then all of a sudden you see all these like lizard like monsters like running at the wall, and you see all these crazy like devices that they've kind of come up with to use on the Great Wall to kill all of these things, right? So
completely historical, I'm sure. Yeah.
So this is not true.
I think I read about that in my history book.
Right. So they kind of, so these lizards basically just get destroyed at first until they start like World War Z-ing and like kind of just like climbing up on top of each other.
Yeah. So the bodies pile up and they stack up.
They start like climbing up that way.
Yeah. So they can invent these giant machines to blow them up, but they don't realize that might be an issue.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's okay. So some of the fight sequences, especially the first two, I would say, are really cool. And what we learned is that Matt Damon's character is awesome with a bow and arrow.
Yeah.
And
which they show a lot in the preview,
right?
And the trailers.
And they actually, it's really cool. His like scene, his first like action scene on the wall is actually pretty sweet and probably one of the highlights of the film.
Is he like Legolasing style, like sliding down the thing? And
that's one of the Lord of the Rings references. I felt like they kind of he's kind of like Legolas. He's like he's flawless with a bow and arrow.
Gotcha.
And his buddy, which. And this is
funny because they gave him long hair too. So.
Right. Okay. So I would say the first half hour is actually pretty solid. It's not amazing, but it was decent and engrossing enough to kind of keep me engaged. Mm-hmm. But that's really it. As far as some of the positives, just being kind of having the Lord of the Rings. So what happens is it starts to fall apart. One, you learn where these monsters come from.
Mordor, right?
Right. Right out of the pit. Yeah. So no, what happens is
this is the first Godzilla movie, and
what they do is they do this thing where they show you the paintings of like the history of it, and then as the lady is like narrating, it does a like where the paintings come to life scene where it's like animated in that way.
Oh, okay.
And as she's reading it, and it's
right.
It's not terrible, but what happened was. Thousands of years ago, a meteor fell from the sky, hit the mountain, where all of these creatures come and out every 60 years to attack, or something like that.
Okay, so like Pitch Black sort of a thing.
Kind of. Okay. Right. I like Pitch Black better.
Yeah, but, it's a good movie.
So,
and I do want to say this as well. I said Godzilla. I recognize that China and Japan are not the same. So people are like, Godzilla's not China.
Thanks for clarifying.
Yeah, no worries.
But okay, nitpick, Matt Damon's accent bothered the heck out of me. He sounded like he was from Texas.
Really? Because he's supposed to be English, right? European,
yeah.
Okay.
It didn't sound European. Like, so his
Europe,
partner Pedro did. They don't clarify.
Okay,
but
I could see maybe a Spaniard or something.
So
I don't know.
30 minutes they force this relationship thing between Matt Damon and this girl. The main girl at the Great Wall, and I apologize, I cannot pronounce your name.
It's Tianjin, right?
Right.
Commander.
That's probably
Lin
the best. That's probably the best way to go. I'll just have you pronounce everything.
There
so, they force this relationship, like he's interested in her, but for no reason, and she's not giving him really the time of day. It's like this really weird thing,
which means they have to get together
to the point where he's like abandoning everything that he's done with his partner to do this. I feel like William Dafoe is wasted in this movie. I don't know why he's even in it.
Yeah.
He's just kind of there to be like a nervous Nelly kind of guy where he's like, I don't know about this. We need to do this if we're going to go.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just wasted characters. They're kind of through line. I guess there's a lack of arc as far as their characters. I feel like some of the best movies are the characters that start from one place in a maturity sense, and then they grow, and you see them grow over time, and like at the end of their arc, you're like, wow, they're almost like a different person than when they started out, and those are some really cool things.
So 2 questions.
Yes.
If I can.
Do it.
First one is special effects wise, what did you feel they did? Because we talked about this. We talked about how they looked a little shoddy with some of the special effects.
Right. It was okay. And I don't want to say it was okay all the time, because there were some times where it was glaring like, oh, this is bad CG.
Yeah.
Namely toward the end, where it was mostly CG. And then at the beginning, the very first sequence with Matt Damon showing his sweet bow skills, that was pretty cool. That actually showed up pretty sweet.
Okay.
Especially when it was just like one-on-one with him in this thing. That was pretty sweet. What was the other question? My
second question is, how did it end?
Okay. So I like the ending kind of. It was okay. We might get into spoiler territory. If you wanted to see the Great Wall a little bit,
I think we can chance it. There's enough people out there.
They Independence Day it. Which is essentially take out the mother alien monster to disable all the other ones.
Some guy blows up the butt of a lizard.
Right. Essentially, shoots a grenade type deal into like
big twist ending. This is actually set in modern day, and some F-15s flying.
Right.
Yeah.
Hey guys, I'm back.
That would be a good twist. Yeah.
That probably would have been the best ending ever.
Yeah.
But no. So there's all these monsters are controlled by a queen, and it like sends out vibrations. And one of the things that they use to negate the communication between the queen and this thing is they use the power of a magnet, and they test it. You show this in the movie. They use a magnet to I don't know, messes with the polarity, so they can't get the signals from the queen.
Yeah.
And so they just become useless, and they just sit there.
Sounds exactly like Independence Day.
Right.
Yeah.
So take out the queen, and that's really it. I mean, it was okay. It started off better and then kind of fell apart. The love story thing, the weird, like William Dafoe's character, Pedro Pascal, just kind of where they went, like what? The ending was very much had that like hero. I know it's different kind of crew altogether, but the Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragons, some of the like maybe some of the people are moving in a way that's defying physics a little bit more than I'd like to see right now.
Wire work type stuff.
Yeah, not a lot, but some of it I was like, that's weird.
Yeah,
But
it's starting to sound. I mean, I haven't seen it yet, and I might see it. We'll see, but it sounds a little bit tonally unfocused on the basis of it doesn't really seem like there's one thread, like you said, that it's this type of movie. It's this type of movie. It's got weird story arc structure for characters. It doesn't really know what world it's set in, it sounds like, because obviously we don't have giant lizards that have tried to invade or attack us on Earth, and so it's not real. But then it sounds like they tried to ground it in reality at times by making it like Europeans and the Great Wall.
Right.
But then now you're saying that they're including...
They break it a little bit.
Yeah, they're including like a Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, which was very like almost... It was almost like a story, that was what was so cool about Crouching Tiger is they set up very quickly, like, these are the rules that guide us.
The ending was like a hot air balloon attack.
Oh my goodness.
That's what I got from that. Anyway, it's kind of funny.
Wow, around the world in 40 days. There you go. Yeah. Well, that's crazy, Matt. So on a scale of, A to F, what would you rate this one?
Can I give it an okay minus?
Yeah.
So no, I would say I got to give it a D+.
Okay.
I give it a D+. I can't necessarily recommend it. But if you want to see Matt Damon talk like a Texan, this might be your movie.
Yeah.
If this is what you've been waiting for, to hear Matt Damon talk like a Texan with really long hair, I highly recommend this movie then.
Very much might be worth it.
But that's really all I got for that. But let's just move on to the next segment. Let's
Sure.
see what else we got. Joel, what is the other film that you got to see this?
Yeah, so this will be the last film we'll be talking about today, and this was one that I just got back from seeing a few hours ago.
Nice.
So very fresh in the mind.
Sweet.
Which I will disclaimer right now, I usually like to give a bit of a day to 2 days between reviewing a film and watching it. It allows me some time to kind of process my thoughts, as well as potentially read up on different elements of the story and the production and the director and everything. So that way I know, okay, I'm not just basing this purely off emotion. So I'm going to do my best here and shoot off the cuff.
Do it.
See how it goes. The film we're talking about is A Cure for Wellness.
All right.
And it is, the plot synopsis of this is an ambitious young executive is sent to retrieve his company's CEO from an idyllic but mysterious wellness center, that's quotation mark wellness center, at a remote location in the Swiss Alps, but soon suspects that the spa's treatments are not what they seem. It is directed by Gore Verbinski, and it stars Dane DeHaan, Jason Isaacs, and Mia Goth. And this film, so this is the film that I mentioned when we started talking earlier in the beginning of the podcast, that I want to kind of do a little bit backwards.
Right.
So this film has been getting a lot of really bad publicity.
Right. It's got a 39% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Yeah, 39%. I think Metacritic had it by like around a 40 or so.
Yeah.
It's in IMDb here. It's got it at a 6.7 out of 10, which is pretty low for IMDb. I actually surprisingly liked the film.
Cool.
I liked it a lot more than, for whatever reason, the critics are attacking it and saying things for. And I want to start off with the bad, because I think this is the reason why a lot of the critics are saying, or they're at least justifying what it is about the film that they really didn't like. And I can completely validate this. I think this is absolutely a fact, which is, and I really don't want to spoil anything with this film because it's got a pretty complex.
Yeah, please don't. I want to see it still.
Yeah, I wouldn't say necessarily complex. You pretty much get what's going on, but it's got a very suspenseful story structure, and you need to not know what's going on in order to keep that suspense there. Yeah. But the ending of the film is falling flat for a lot of people, and I would agree as well. This film had it felt almost chalked on ending. It felt very tonally almost different than the rest of the film. Okay. And that's after about maybe the final like 20 to 15 minute mark.
Gotcha.
So after about that, you'll experience it and you'll see it for yourself. It's just kind of like, okay, well, this changed. This doesn't feel, and I don't know if I want to spoil it too much, but it switches from what I consider suspense, horror, kind of psychological thriller to more action. It's just kind of a straight up, like, we're just going to deal with action elements now. But the one thing, so get into the good stuff. The film itself is beautiful. It is one of the most beautifully shot films I've seen, except for maybe like Arrival or A Monster Calls, recently. This is it's a gorgeous film, and a lot of the shots you're looking at, and they serve multiple purposes, which is really cool about the cinematography. And it's basically, the cinematography is done by a guy named I might butcher his name here, but Bohan Bazeli. And prior to this, he really didn't do anything that made me think that he could pull this off. He did The Ring, which had okay cinematography. He did Mr. and Mrs. Smith, which did okay but serviceable cinematography. He also did Lone Ranger. He's done films that are just like okay cinematography, but this took it to like a whole new level. And it's sad to me because I feel like if the critics were maybe treating this a little more fairly, he would stand to win some awards for this. Wow. Because it definitely deserves it. There's shots that I was talking about that you can tell are purposeful in nature, and they leave you with sort of a disjointed, uncomfortable feeling in the way that they're framed and the way that they're put together.
I felt that way in the trailers.
Yeah, even in the trailers, and you can see that. And the thing that the trailers didn't do very well, and I feel very, very much the case with this, is that it didn't really portray what kind of film it was trying to be in some of the trailers and some of the previews. Right. It kind of felt like maybe it was more of an action with some horror elements. This was very much a psychological thriller. It very much is, you're going into this world not knowing what's happening, why it's happening, who's doing what for what reason.
Still have the Shutter Island vibes?
It did have a bit of a Shutter Island vibes, but the thing that I liked about this film more is that it felt like with Shutter Island, it kind of like tiptoed into the psychological elements of things. Right. Things would go kind of bad and they would kind of feel bad, and that's all to do maybe with the plot. Sure. But this film goes there. one of the things that is very clear about this film is that they do not shy away from some of like the whoa moments. Like there's visually horrific things that happen to a number of the characters at a number of times, and it's like really happening, and they don't shy away from showing it. You're just like, wow, kind of cringeworthy moments, but they're shot so well that it's like you want to see this. And the other thing I would say about this is Dane DeHaan, who's the main lead in this. I think he did a great job with it. I think he went far enough with it where you didn't feel like he was overly selling it, like he wasn't overly acting into this role, but he was very believable, and you really understood at the beginning of the film where he's coming from, because he has a bit of a history, and they kind of reveal his history through some flashbacks and stuff that comes out of the course of the film, and you understand where he's coming from and why he would be that way, and then you see his natural story arc and how he gets to a place. But then again, like I said, the ending of the film kind of feels a little bit like, okay, why? Okay, I get that, but still, what? So there's some stuff at the end, and that definitely kind of left it from being like a top tier film for me.
Right.
But the entire film, super suspenseful, it builds, but it gets there. It's really suspenseful. There's really intense moments. There's moments where I'm kind of like on the edge of my seat, like, crud, what's going to happen here?
Right.
The sound design is really awesome. The stuff that I was saying with Shutter Island as well is that in that film, the score was like bombastic.
Okay.
It just like blew me out of the water as far in like a bad way. Like
right. Took you out of the movie.
Yeah, it took me out of the movie. Whereas this film, everything sound design wise fits perfectly. It's very ominous, very eerie at times. The way that they show you things has a natural progression. There's like a scene, and I don't want to spoil too much again, but there's like a scene that happens about halfway through when he like in the town, there's people involved with this, and it's like the whole setup of what's happening with this. Yeah, I wish I could tell you.
That's okay.
But there's people involved, and visually it's just like, whoa, something happens, and you see it, and you're just like, okay. And the cool thing about the film is that it always leaves you guessing. You're always wondering what's happening here. Why is this happening?
As a good suspense thriller should.
Yeah, it's a great suspense thriller. The acting is good. It's not amazing, but it's good. It's serviceable.
Right.
Nobody falls flat. Nobody feels like they're phoning it in. The script itself felt like it was well structured. It was well planned. The ending, did leave it, because this is the big thing is, the term, the name basically of the film is A Cure for Wellness. And it does kind of, at one point or other, it kind of gets away from that idea of the film being about a cure for wellness and kind of goes into the suspense and the story that's kind of behind the story. And it dwells into that so far that you kind of lose the main theme and the main thing that basically has set up Dane DeHaan to go through this whole journey.
Right.
But it does revisit at the end. It just feels a little bit forced because it's kind of like, oh yeah, that was happening. Everything is so crazy, and so just what the heck is going on? Then when they finally come back to it, you're like, oh yeah, that's true.
So my question is, where do you think the disparity is? Because I know that for me, personally, an ending doesn't necessarily mean it'll make or break the movie.
Yeah.
For me, obviously, if it's a great ending to a movie that I thought was okay, then that could elevate the movie. Yeah. I actually felt that way about Split. The other one was, I know for a lot of people, it could be like a really, really good movie, and then the ending like ruins the whole thing. Where I come from the mindset of, I don't know, did you enjoy the movie? For the most part, to the end. And, I mean,
that's a very valid question and a valid point to bring up, because I think that's kind of the issue that I'm having. I just saw the movie. I've only just started looking into some of the reviews. I think Gore Verbinski just really did a great job with this. It is a little long as well. That's maybe the other thing I should have mentioned. It does feel like they could have cut out fairly some time out of this to make it much more succinct.
Right.
But it doesn't. I never got bored. I never was sitting in my chair like, man, when is this going to move on to the next scene? Because every scene is still suspenseful. But what you said is very valid, and I think that is why I do mark it lower than it is, because of the ending. Okay. But it doesn't ruin the last 2 hours. Yeah, because it's a 2.5 hour long movie.
Right.
It doesn't ruin the last 2 hours and 10 minutes or so of the film.
Right.
It doesn't do anything to say that stuff was bad. It just kind of is like, okay, well, it feels like you more missed maybe an opportunity to do that. I don't know. I don't know exactly what it was. It almost felt like Gore Verbinski shot the entire film except for the ending, and then they brought in another. it really reeked of studio. It really honestly did. It really felt like the studio saw the original ending and went, that's not what we like to do with our endings. Can you reshoot that and do something a little bit different? Maybe something that feels a little bit different. And they ended up doing that, and it got, I don't know, but it just felt that way. But it doesn't ruin the whole film. It doesn't warrant to me giving this a 60% rating like a lot of the critics are. And the thing that we talked about before is that, and this is what ticks me off so much, we're all crying out for films that are new, that are novel, that do different things, that have a different feel to them and aren't just like, Superman blah or this superhero movie X, or this other film that was once a film here and we're moving in. It does have a semblance and an idea of other films, that are part of it, but it feels like it feels kind of like a mixture of like The Shining mixed with like Shutter Island.
Sure.
So it's kind of like those two films together, but it doesn't feel like it's trying to be either of those. It feels like it's trying to be its own film. It's got its own merits that it stands on. So I wish people would, maybe critic-wise, would look at this a little bit differently. I'm going to look into it more and try and figure out maybe what exactly is going on.
That's really interesting that it's like that.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you had to rate this thing.
Yeah, I think if I had to rate this, I would give it a B+, a high B+. I would give it like an 89.
That's
80,
awesome.
89. So, and I will, again, for all the people that are thinking about going out and watch it, there's a reason why it's rated R. It's got some very gory moments, some very shocking moments. It's got some fair amount of nudity. It's not one of those films you're going to go into as well and just leave going like, yeah, that was a great thing. It's going to leave you thinking. It's going to leave you going,
it's not a feel-good movie.
Yeah, it's not a feel-good family film. A feel-good family film for February. So
go see Lego Batman instead if you have kids with you.
It's a great option. Yeah. So that's all, Matt. Is there anything you had? Any thoughts you wanted to share for Cure?
No.
Awesome.
I want to check it out, see what it's about. So
all right. Well, hopefully you get a chance to. So that's going to be all for us on the Real Review podcast for today. We'll be coming out with our Tube Talk as well as our Coming Soon in the next couple of days, and you can check that out. We're going to be releasing, well, not necessarily the next couple of days, but we're going to be releasing those segments at different times. So for everybody that's used to our standard format, we've changed it. But we'd love to hear from you. We'd love to hear any thoughts you might have had about these films. Maybe you felt like A Cure for Wellness is getting lambasted for wrong reasons, or maybe you felt like it really did stink. So we'd love to hear from you. You can email us at realreviewmedia@gmail.com, or you can check us out on Facebook, which is facebook.com/realreviewmedia. And as always, real spelled REEL. And lastly, but not leastly, we have a website. Definitely check that out and get signed up for our newsletter, which is realreviewmedia.com. So that is all, Matt. Any other things for us? What?
You said lastly, but not least.
Last but not leasty.
I thought you said last but not leasty.
I'm going on very little sleep here, Matt.
I love that.
Yeah. Hopefully nobody judges me too harshly.
That's all I got.
Cool. Well, then, it's been real.
It's been real.